1189 commentary, 1189 days, 1189 chapters. That's what we're doing. This is going to be Genesis chapter 18. We won't waste time, we'll just get into it.
Chapter 18. And the Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent.
Now, KJV says plains, and KJV says terebinth. Some say oak, some say the trees of Mamre. Now, the Hebrew word is ayil, something along those lines. I'll just cross-check. Yeah, it's ayil, a terebinth, from the same as ulam. It has different variations like elim, high elim. So, you know, like with elim, how Moses came out of Egypt with the Israelites and they came to Elim, which had 12, was it oaks, and then 70 springs, or 70 oaks, 70 trees, and 12, yeah, it must have been 12 springs and 70 trees, must have been that. Now, that is like a symbolism for elders, something like that, because Jesus had 12 disciples and 70 other disciples. Yeah, so there we have it. So also Mamre is in Hebron. We discussed that in Genesis, I believe 16, somewhere around there, because so Hebron is like passing over. It means to pass over. It means the Passover, the time when Jesus died. That is the salvation by faith. Yeah, you can go back and study that wherever I mentioned it. Cool. Moving on.
Door in the heat of the day, and he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he...
Boom. Now, who are these 3 men? Many people say it's the Trinity, but as we're gonna move on, we're gonna read on. It's not gonna be the Trinity. We'll understand why.
He saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself toward the ground, and said,
My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort ye your hearts. After that ye shall pass on.
Right, so he said, my Lord, so speaking to one of them, or 3 of them, but we're going to see in the, like, a few chapters later, a few verses later, we'll understand that he's speaking to one of them, because the 2 depart and he says, my Lord. So he's speaking to one of them. So let's see, let's go on.
Therefore are ye come to your servant.
And they said, So do, as thou hast said. And Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah, and said,
Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth.
And Abraham ran unto the herd, and fetched a calf tender and good, and gave it unto a young man, and he hasted to dress it. And he took butter and milk and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. And they said unto him, Where is Sarah, thy wife? And he said,
Behold, in the tent.
And he said,
I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son.
And Sarah heard it in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying,
After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord, being old also?
And the Lord...
Now, again, like Abram, she left Abraham just before he was named Abraham. Actually, just during the time he's named Abraham. So here we have her as well, prophesying his name with the laughter, because Yitzhak means laughter. Moving
said
on.
unto Abraham,
Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son.
Then Sarah denied, saying,
I laughed not.
For she was afraid. And he said,
Nay, but thou didst laugh.
And the men rose up from thence, and looked toward Sodom. And Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. And the Lord said,
Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do?
Isn't it funny how God handles Sarah in this situation? Notice he didn't ask Abram why he laughed in the other, chapter 16, no 17 actually. He only asked Sarah in this chapter, "Why are you laughing, Sarah?" Then she's like, "I didn't laugh. You just like the God, Almighty God." And he's like, "You laughed." Then he moves on. Like, that's the right way to handle stuff, okay, people? Just move on with life. Don't gotta stress out. Just do like Jesus, right? Moving on.
Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him, for I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him.
And the Lord said,
Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous.
You know what I think that is? Because this is the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah. So it should be like the blood crying out, like the way the blood of Abel was speaking against Cain in Genesis chapter 4. I believe that's kind of the same thing that's happening here. So there is a cry from the non-living things to God. They're saying, "You've put us in subjection to people that are dangerous, that are subjecting us to evil, are subjecting us to the devil." So I think that's a cry. That's a cry there.
I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is...
Right, so this also doesn't make sense, because if God is God, then he should be omniscient. He should know all things. He should be able to know who's doing what. But I believe this is in terms of like a court case, like with Job 1, and then how David says, "Better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere." It's like a court case. So in a court case, you need more than one witness. So probably the maybe the blood, the earth was crying out. So God needed another witness, maybe sending these angels down there, because we're going to see that two of them went on, and Abraham calls this other person that remained Lord. So yeah, let's see what happens.
...is come unto me, and if not, I will know.
And the men turned their faces from thence and went toward Sodom. But Abraham stood yet before the Lord, and Abraham...
So the men went towards Sodom, and then Abraham stood before the Lord. So there is one Lord there, so one remained, that's two went on. So those were not the Lord, that one person was the Lord. So these others must have been, I don't know, like accompanying angels or something. Moving on.
Abraham drew near and said,
Wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Peradventure there be 50 righteous within the city. Wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein? Let be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked that be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right?
And the Lord said,
If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sakes.
And Abraham answered and said,
Behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, which am but dust and ashes. Peradventure there shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous. Wilt thou destroy all the city for lack of 5?
And he said,
If I find there 40 and 5, I will not destroy it.
And he spake unto him yet again, and said,
Peradventure there shall be 40 found there.
And he said,
I will not do it for 40's sake.
And he said unto him,
O let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Peradventure there shall 30 be found there.
And he said,
I will not do it if I find 30 there.
And he said,
Behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord. Peradventure there shall be 20 found there.
And he said,
I will not destroy it for 20's sake.
And he said,
O let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak yet but this once. Peradventure 10 shall be found there.
And he said,
I will not destroy it for 10's sake.
And the Lord went his way as soon as he had left communing with Abraham. And Abraham returned unto his place.
Right, so now for the sake of 10, he would not destroy it. Did he find 10? We'll see in the next chapter. He found only Lot, his wife, his daughters, and the other men that were with the husbands of Lot's daughters. Right, so yes, and we know from later on, as we're going to read, there are only 2 daughters. So that makes 4 of them. So Lot's wife, and then 2 daughters. That makes 4. Plus the husbands would have been 6. So yeah, if Abraham would have just gone down to 5, then maybe, just maybe, Sodom and Gomorrah would have been spared. But nope. Also, notice this isn't under the period of the law where everyone gets what they deserve. It's under the dispensation of grace like we're in. So there is still judgment under grace. There is still judgment on nations. Some people say, oh, Jesus died for the sins of the world, therefore there's no judgment on sin. No, it's not true. Jesus' blood only applies to those who believe. The remission of sins only applies to believers, not nations that don't believe or people that don't believe. So they're still under the judgment of God, the wrath, as the Bible says. So I believe that's all. That is all. I just wanted to make another mention of Abraham's name change that we saw in the last chapter. Moving into this chapter, we see how he gets to now be a judge in a way, because of his name change. So it's moving from, so like this is it's like a foreshadowing of what's going to happen when we all get our new names, like it says in Revelations 2:17. He wasn't able to hear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who is victorious, I will give him the hidden manna. I will also give him a white stone inscribed with a new name, known only to the one who receives it. Thus, we see that after the name change, we're now become priests and kings unto God. So we're direct intercessors. So when God is judging the nations at the end, deciding who's going into the lake of fire, then we get to decide the nations. Okay, you get to intercede for the nations. Even before, yeah, actually, because circumcision was the 8th day, if you listen to the other. So that's the 8,000th year. So that's after the millennium. So yeah, when God is casting all people out, it's going to be in need of witnesses, right? So God isn't just going to act on his own knowledge, but he's going to say, you see, guys, so it's not only me that agrees to this, it's everybody else. So boom, there you go. Go down there. So there we have it. And yeah, it's going to be interesting, chapter 19. So I'll see you tomorrow.